and welcome back to Vinyl Friday, where I go through my records in alphabetical order like a big nerd and talk about why I love them. This week's a Rubber Soul week. The Word, track 6, side 1, Rubber Soul. Now I think the first and foremost thing really to say about this song is that it's really funky for a group of white Englishmen in 1965. I'm going to try and break down why it's funky. Let's start with what instruments are at play at the moment. Piano, guitar, bass, drums. That's what we have in the beginning. A big contributor to the overall funkiness of this track. Each instrument is doing something fairly sparse, but different from all of the other ones. Each one has a very specific rhythm that it's playing. It's clashing in a very satisfying way against all the other instruments. We'll start with the guitar. What the guitar is doing is it's playing not on the 2 and 4 as it did in You Won't See Me. Instead, it's playing on the 2 and 3.5. So it's slightly funkier. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4. We're getting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and... I'll stop counting and play some music, it'll make more sense. I've hired I say hired, but she's not getting paid, a guitar consultant for this specific purpose. Here she is. Hello. That little bit of syncopation makes it just that little bit funkier, which I appreciate. The guitar's not doing very much. It's not a very busy part. The syncopation is a very specific thing that it's doing. And you'll see why that's important in a second. Side note, this is also quite a funky chord. I'd like to ask the guitar consultant to play it for us again. It would be my pleasure. This is the chord. Pure funk. Before I depart, we've all met Carlos, and indeed I think we're about to meet Carlos again, but we haven't met Georgia. This is Georgia. She's a bit of a fixture on the channel as well, and I love her dearly. Well, that's all very nice, but what's the bass doing? Do 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 do. Don't take my word for it. The Beatles will tell you. No, that's not good enough. Let's get the bass correspondent in here as well. That's cool. I always enjoyed playing this part when I was in the Elementary Penguins, doing my best impression of Paul McCartney with this gaudy green bass. Okay, so we've covered guitar and bass. So the piano is going 1. Again, this makes no sense with just the counting. Let's have our piano correspondent come on up here. Hello. The piano is buried quite low in the mix, so here's what I assume that it's doing. I may be not entirely correct, but I am doing my best. We've run into a bit of a problem in that I don't really play drums and I don't have a drum correspondent, so I'm going to have to approximate the drum part, which is played pretty straight by comparison against all these other interestingly syncopated instruments. But let's pretend I'm a drummer with this bad boy. Pretend this is a whole drum kit. Now that we've listened to them all in isolation, here's what it would sound like if I were all of the Beatles at the same time. So, in conclusion, you've got 4 instruments playing 4 different rhythms, and it's creating this intricate tangle of different rhythms playing off each other, polyrhythms. That, I think, is what makes the song sound so damn funky. Couple of side notes. 1, I really like what the bass does at the chorus. It's literally just the chord outlined. A, G. Paul does this really cool little lick. It goes like this. Except he plays it. I'll try and play along with it. So he's using it as a little transition between the first chord and the second chord. How cool is that? Today, people still make the comment that Paul's early bass lines are really basic. But if you have a listen to this, he clearly had the capacity to do really interesting and challenging things in his bass lines. And also, I'm freezing. Great bass line, great polyrhythms, very simple song. It's just chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, which you see a lot on this album, and I sometimes wonder if it's because they only had a matter of weeks to write all these songs and record it, so maybe they didn't bother with middle eights for a lot of these songs. They do things like add extra harmonies in the later choruses and verses that makes it a little bit more interesting. So whereas in the beginning it's say the word. Paul is singing his heart out here. There's sort of two dominant harmony parts and then a little quiet one at the bottom. Say the word. That quiet one at the bottom at the end of the song gets thrown right up the top. It's very high and it's very prominent in the mix, and that's what makes it a little bit more exciting the last time around. I'll show you if I can. It's pretty high. Get the word, it's just a say. Spread the word, it's just the way. Also, the harmonies at the So Fine Sunshine, so good. Top harmony. It's so fine, the sunshine. Second harmony. So fine, the sunshine. So fine, the sunshine. So fine, the sunshine. The song is an excellent example of how the Beatles are more than the sum of their parts when they sing together. You can hear, when it's just the two of them, which is John and which is Paul, but when the three of them sing together, they create the three-part Beatles sound, and it's very difficult to distinguish the voices. It just creates this beautiful noise, which is why we love the Beatles, isn't it? They make beautiful noises. This song, while it is about love, is not at all about romantic love, as far as I can surmise. It's about the world peace version of love, which I think, again, we can attribute to their dabbling in acid. And, you know, like, I think that's a pretty good message to impart. He was still imparting that same message 2 years later. Say the word and you'll be free, and that's all you need. It's love. To summarize John Lennon's 1965 to 67 life thesis, which is just to say that it's a departure from the direction that they were taking before, which was a very juvenile treatment of love and romance. This song is not about romance. This song is about the ineffable quality of a more general love towards other people, a sense of goodwill and generosity and just respect. Just respecting the inherent worth of other people, which I think is a good message. Well done, John Lennon. The last thing I was going to say about this song is that this was the only song when I was a kid listening to Rubber Soul through my headset, my Sony Walkman, so that my parents didn't have to listen to this album 3 times a day. This was the only one that I wasn't hugely fond of, and I think it's because it is just a little bit heavier. It just goes a little bit harder than a lot of the other songs. I had an unrefined musical palette as a 6-year-old, and I think it was a little bit too much for me. I like it very much now. I don't think that there's a dud song on this album. Fight me. I mean, maybe Run for Your Life. But not because musically it's bad, because thematically it's bad. That's everything from me. Thanks for hanging out with me. If you would like to support this stuff that I do, I would be very grateful and humbled if you made a donation to my Buy Me a Coffee page. But don't feel obliged. No pressure. I'd probably be doing this either way. Actually, I would be doing this either way because I'm not making any money doing this. I just really love my records. I will see you next week. Have a great weekend! So, we'll start with the guitar. What the guitar do? We'll start with the guitar. What the guitar do? Twice in a row.